Let's start by creating an ActionScript 3.0 file. And you are going to need your scene panel. Remember, all your panels are here under the window menu. By default, all of your scenes are named Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, Scene 4. However, you can double click on it to rename a scene. To create a new scene, you hit the New Scene button down here at the bottom left. You can see how they get named that. And then the one next to it is a duplicate scene. And this one's important because a lot of times when you are creating scenes, you have elements that you want repeated, like the layout or the background, you want repeated throughout your animation. So in that case, you would use the duplicate. And if I duplicated scene 3, see what it calls it, scene 3 copy, copy 2, etc. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and, the order that these run is the order that you have them here. Okay, so if you were to play this animation now, I'm actually start a new one real quick so that you can see. If I created scene 1, had a rectangle, and I duplicated it 3 times, and then let's say I created a new scene there that had a circle and another one here that had a polygon, and then maybe one at the end that had a star. There we go. Now if I did a control test movie, it would play those in this order. Now they're going really fast flashing because they are only 1/24 of a second. Okay, so that's why it does that, but this is the order. So if you decided, oh well, I don't really want the square first, I want the circle first, you simply move that scene up there. Okay, and then remember that when you rename your scenes, Animate can be picky as far as capital letters and spaces go. So you want to make sure that you are naming things all lowercase, no spaces, and keep it short and simple. There's no reason to name something really long. Make it a short name. So what you are going to do on your file that you create is you are going to have 4 scenes. You are going to have, the first one is going to be outdoors. The second one is going to be home. And obviously you see that I'm making this from the new button. That's because each one of these is different. They are not going to be the same at all. Whoops, I didn't get to rename that one. They are going to have something different on each one, and they are going to last 5 seconds. So for quick math purposes, let's change our frame rate to 25 frames per second. And when we do that, we know that we are going to have each scene is going to last 125 frames. That way they each last 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit pause. You should too, and when I come back, I will show you my scenes. Remember, each scene also needs to have a movie clip animation running separately on a different timeline. Okay, before we make any changes to this, there's some saving that I want to do. So this file here is going to be saved as your period number, last name, scenes.fla. However, once you save that, I also want you to save this as a second, because the next part of this challenge, you're going to be adding buttons. So I'm going to make a second file from this, one Samuelson buttons.fla. Okay, so I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure that I have the one called scenes open to work on. Don't get confused and put it on a different one. So if we look at my different scenes, I see something different on each one. They're all lasting 125 frames, which is how I wanted it. So now if I go to Control Test Movie in Animate, it's going to create a Swift file. And we can see that I have clouds moving across the sky. I have a clock that is turning. I have a light that is flashing on and off in the home scene. And then in my hobby scene, I have a tennis court with a sun rotating in the background. Okay, so those are my 4 different scenes. Now, what we're going to do on, and I'm choosing the outdoors scene. You can choose, you know, something that makes more sense to you if you'd like, but that's the one that I'm going to choose. I am going to use this. First, I'm going to unlock all my layers, and then I'm going to use this camera tool. And when I use the camera tool, 2 things happen. Number 1, I get a new layer called camera, and number 2, I get this slider right here that does 2 things. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to decide how this scene should look to a camera on this first keyframe. And I'm going to decide to, there's 2 parts to this. This part rotates, this part zooms and pans. So I want to zoom in. I can see the outline of my stage here. I'm going to zoom way in, and I'm going to pan to where you see the tree. Then I'm going to go about 20, and I'm just kind of estimating here. You may have a plan different than mine, and that's okay. I'm F6ing to put in a keyframe, and this is where I can either zoom and pan out a little bit more. Okay. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. And I'm going to go 20 more frames and insert one. However, this time I'm actually going to switch over here to the rotate. And oops, I always try to rotate it like you rotate it a shape or something. You rotate with this slider. So I'm going to rotate it over here, and I'm going to make sure that the stage is covered though. Okay, and then I'm going to go to 50 and insert, and I'm going to rock it back the other way. And again, I want to make sure that my stage is covered. I don't want any white area showing in the corners. So I'm going to do this rock back and forth for 4 different keyframes. Whoops. And 1 more there. And then I will go and get it back to the middle. And that's going to take a little bit of adjustment. There we go. And now I can continue to get it to, oops, I was using the wrong one. I'm going to switch back to the zoom and pan. I'm going to get it to where it's going to fit back on the stage fully. Right about here. Whoops, I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so that looks like it's going to work just about right. So now if I go and play through this, okay, right now they're just keyframes, so you can see the keyframes, right? So if I highlight all of my frames, I can then right click and I can choose Create Classic Tween. Classic Tween is different than a motion tween. It works kind of similarly, but it's got some differences, and that's because I set up the keyframes ahead of time. So now if I play through it, you can see how I can rock it back and forth and zoom and pan on my scene. And now if I do a Control Test Movie, it's going to look a little bit different in that particular scene. And that's how you use that camera tool. You only have to do it in one scene, but you're going to add the camera tool to one scene. Okay? And once you play it and check it, Go ahead and save it once again, scenes, and make sure that at the end that you do a test so that you can have a current Swift file published. And just so you know, if you do a test scene, it only publishes one scene. It doesn't publish it as an entire movie. So make sure you're doing a test movie or a test. And then those can go on your canvas and you can move on to the next one.